I will see you again, right?
No one will. Gotham needs something more. A legend more powerful than I can be right now. A legend that can only rise from the ashes of the Batman.
You read what others had done, and you took the next step. You didn't earn the knowledge for yourselves, so you don't take any responsibility.
Rocksteady was a studio that pretty much all the fans loved. From Arkham Asylum all the way through Arkham Knight, we were given the opportunity to play as one of the most iconic superheroes of all time in a game that made you feel like Batman. It took interesting twists and turns, all while respecting Batman's long history and fan base. So when some idiot walks into a room and pitches the idea of 4 weak villains slaughtering the entire Justice League and pissing all over their graves to people who made games like that, you'd think he would immediately be kicked out of the room. Instead, they decided to throw hundreds of millions of dollars at that idea, and now here we are witnessing this nightmare.
Oh, somebody kill me, please!
There's a ton of nonsense in this game, but let's start with the story. The few people who like this game keep yelling at everyone to play it and get context, as if there's some context that justifies Harley Quinn giving Batman a morality lesson, then putting a bullet in his brain. If you haven't figured it out yet, that's my way of saying, as someone who sat through the entirety of this game, there is no context that justifies any of what happens. These people twist and reshape DC canon to fit their idiotic needs, usually in some attempt to make a horrifyingly unfunny joke. You know how a Green Lantern's ring flies away when they die to find a worthy host? Yeah, not here. This game has King Shark cut off Green Lantern's finger and then put on the ring. Accuracy and logic be damned. Big green shark breaks shield. Apparently, when these morons arrive in Metropolis, Brainiac has been there for 3 weeks. He's had multiple heroes like Batman and Green Lantern under his control for 3 damn weeks and barely took over Metropolis. In what world does that make any kind of sense? That's enough power and tactical knowledge to take over the world, let alone one city. In this game, that's not even enough brain power to realize that in a city with nothing else going on, you should throw all your resources at what is literally the only threat out there, even if it is 4 low-tier villains. Batman would recognize that fact and immediately deal with them, but instead, he plays around with them before getting interrupted and forgets about them. There's absolutely no benefit in keeping these guys alive. In other stories, villains want the heroes to suffer for personal grudges, but this should have been all about business. Brainiac would want these 4 immediately taken out and unable to interrupt his plans.
That's not what happened.
My 10-year-old laptop has a faster processor than Brainiac. He lets these morons continue to take out his assets one by one and just keeps sending easily defeatable drones. The League should have all converged on these idiots instead of facing them 1-on-4. Again, each one of these heroes on paper wipes the goddamn floor with all 4 of them. But not in this version. This game should have been about playing as one League member who didn't get corrupted, trying to free the rest of them. The potential there is incredible, but instead this is what we got. Even if they absolutely needed to use this team, the execution here was awful. They should have had a ton of other DC heroes fighting against the Justice League in Metropolis. That would have explained why these 4 slipped under everyone's radar. But again, that would take some tiny bit of intelligence, which is clearly not something anyone at Rocksteady has anymore. The characters themselves are what you'd expect from a modern interpretation. Let's start with our main team of retards. They get their main traversal powers from an easily breakable glass display at the Hall of Justice, which is a place the general public is allowed. Apparently, Batman, Superman, and the whole gang thought it would be a good idea to keep a Speed Force gauntlet, jetpack, and bat drone where they could easily be accessed by by anyone who's willing to punch through some glass. These idiots proceed to genuinely trust Amanda Waller, who put a bomb in their head, then act like it's a big reveal that she's a psychopath who's willing to kill them all to get the job done.
Bunch of idiots.
The issue here is these aren't heroes, they're villains. They're not killing the League because they want to save the world. 3 of them have personal grudges with a League member. They'd be trying to kill them if there wasn't an invasion going on, so they don't get any points for being heroes, and that's something this game refuses to accept. They sit there on some moral high horse, berating the heroes, and then bragging about murder, blowing people up, and stealing. It's one or the other. They can't morally grandstand the Justice League, then continue to be psychotic criminals. Then there's all this shit talking they do to the heroes. Are we supposed to get excited about that? Every boss fight, I was begging for the hero to just put these idiots down and be done with it. But instead, I have to sit there and watch Deadshot stand over a bloody dead Superman and say, "We sent your ass back to Krypton, Kal-El." Not sure what idiot thought, yeah, have them stand over the dead bodies of the audience's favorite heroes and talk shit, cut their fingers off, and piss on them. That'll make the audience love these guys. First up, we have everyone's favorite shrill-voiced, glorified sidekick, Harley Quinn. Remember the attractive Harley from the Arkham games, who was an accurate adaptation of the source material and a fun addition to the Joker's team? Well, as usual, now she's her own strong, don't need no man girl boss. Of course, they remove all the sex appeal from her character because God forbid female characters are actually sexy. But this is something we've been seeing a lot of lately, and it's something I'll get more into when I discuss the costumes and overall design of this game. She loves to talk about all their feelings and emotions, yet the Flash literally sacrifices his life for her twice, and they all still despise him. They don't even consider trying to save him after what he did for them, and they practically piss on his grave. Yet along comes Wonder Woman, and all of a sudden, Harley has feelings now that it's convenient for the story. The double standards are insane here. There's a scene where Lex Luthor uses some kind of tech to freeze the squad in place when they touch it, and everyone except Harley does. Then, in a moment that I promise you is not from a Tumblr fanfiction story, she looks at Deadshot's ass and decides it's worth being frozen to grab it. Call it cliche at this point, I don't really give a fuck. If you reverse the roles, people would send death threats to Deadshot's voice actor for assaulting Harley Quinn. Not that it's even possible to have that situation happen anymore, because while it's fully acceptable for women to sexualize and objectify men, don't you dare even think a single sexual thought about an attractive woman, and if you do, you're an abusive, misogynistic piece of shit.
I hate this place! Why am I here?
The Batman part I'll get into more when I discuss his character, but she stands there and gives him a lecture on morality because he emotionally and mentally damages everyone around him. This is coming from a literal psychotic criminal, a murderer, someone who aided in the slaughtering of thousands of people over the years, and yet the writers decide she's the appropriate person to morally grandstand the goddamn Batman. At one point in the story, after they kill the whole League, she says, and I quote, "This is beautiful, Lexi. We get to fly around the city doing acrobatic shit. The Justice League are all dead, plenty of unsuspecting victims to blow up and get cool toys from." Yeah, clearly this is someone who Batman could learn a thing or two from. Great writing there, Rocksteady. As the team's only straight white male, of course Boomerang is just a joke. That's pretty much all his character is. He's a punchline. He barely listens to what's going on, and he has the IQ of a fucking brick. They went overboard by a lot. He's nowhere near this bad in the comics, but they clearly thought to themselves, funny accent man is dumb. They literally say in front of him, Lex 2 is from another universe, and he proceeds to ask Lex how he grew his hair back so fast. And of course, on Lex 2's Earth, Lady Boomerang exists, and she's much smarter than our Boomerang. They make sure to tell you that multiple times, because logically, making him a woman instantly changes him from a retard into an intelligent badass. Deadshot talks like a 15-year-old on TikTok, and his dialogue is some of the worst to sit through. Apparently he has some sort of rivalry with Green Lantern, and it makes no sense. Why the hell would Green Lantern concern himself with such a low-tier Batman villain? But of course, they didn't have the creativity to go beyond the generic Suicide Squad lineup and ran into a lot of issues since they couldn't have both Harley and Deadshot hold a grudge against Batman for some reason. Oh, and remember how Deadshot was a white guy in the original Arkham games? Well, this guy is the real deal, and that guy was an imposter. To most fans, it's going to be the other way around, but again, just top tier writing there, Rocksteady.
Idiots doing idiot things because they're idiots.
There's not much to say about King Shark. He's a big shark monster who doesn't understand human things. So when someone says, "Bob's your uncle," he says, "I don't have an Uncle Bob." Hilarious. Absolutely hysterical. That's pretty much all there is to his character. Relative to the others, he's the only one who sometimes shows a shred of respect to the heroes when they die. And I say sometimes because this is the guy who ripped off Green Lantern's finger to use his ring. Moving on to the heroes is where the real mean-spirited disrespect comes into play. If you want to save time, just read the leaks, because while all the Twitter fanboys yelled at people for months about how they were fake, the way they said the heroes would be treated ended up being 100% accurate. The first and most obvious point here is that there is no dimension in the entire multiverse where these 4 losers beat any one member of the Justice League when they're heroes, let alone when they're villains who are fully willing to kill. They come up with some BS excuse about Brainiac's corruption affecting the League's DNA, and apparently it gave them an extra chromosome, because that's the only way they would lose to these villains.
Special Officer Doofy reporting.
They're bad boss fights on a conceptual level, because the way this game has the League fight is not how they would fight. The good version of these heroes wouldn't just stand back and be bullet sponges while slowly throwing easily destructible objects or easily dodgeable attacks. The Flash would run in and cuff them, Lantern would easily detain them, and so on. The little devices the game comes up with remind me of the anti-everything devices the CW Flash show would always invent, because they make no sense and Rocksteady expects you to just accept that they work. You can't harness the power of a yellow lantern. That's not how it works. And God only knows how that idiotic anti-Flash device works. Not to mention the fact that every boss fight goes the same damn way. Counter, fill them with bullets, repeat. No creativity at all, just the same formula for heroes with different and unique powers. Then there's the fact that these evil versions are willing to kill. It's pure plot-induced stupidity. After they murder Batman, Superman should have flown in and immediately used his heat vision to rip them in half. But apparently, just like every other hero, he'd rather stand far away and be an easy target just waiting to die. How do any of these idiots survive heat vision blasts or speed punches? Fuck if I know, and Rocksteady sure doesn't give a shit either. They should have picked better top tier villains, or better yet, have the player become one of the heroes who could actually believably fight other Justice League members. Before I get into each hero, I want to point out the issue with the deaths in this game isn't that they happened so much as it is with how they happened. All these heroes have died before, but look at how they died. Flash died to save the multiverse in Crisis. Superman fought to his last breath to save the world from Doomsday. Hell, even Gotham Knights had Batman die first at the hands of Ra's al Ghul, then he sacrifices himself to save his sidekick and the entire city of Gotham by destroying a Lazarus pit. But this game, where these heroes are now willing to kill, they all die by a barrage of bullets from low-tier villains. One pathetic excuse for a sidekick executes them, they have their fingers cut off, or they almost get pissed on.
I'm done. I'm done.
Overall, you get the sense that the writers genuinely have an issue with the heroes. Wonder Woman gets treated somewhat respectfully relative to her teammates, but it comes back to this idea that modern day creatives relate more to loudmouth, disrespectful, morally corrupt villains than the heroes themselves, since they have no morals or ethics. They think of themselves as rebels fighting some imaginary cause, and they imbue their villains with that idea. The heroes are some high and mighty representation of the 1% assholes that these people hate, aka their parents, and the villains are the rude societal outcasts fighting against the tyranny of the system, which they think they are. How do they justify all the murder and criminal activity? Easy, they don't even try to. They frame it as having fun and move on. Just because you can write a story doesn't mean that you should, and it makes perfect sense why Rocksteady's founders left the company now, because this is a great example of the lack of respect that people have when they're dealing with other people's creations. These pink-haired liberal Twitter dorks didn't spend years redefining the gaming genre with the Arkham games, so they don't give a shit about respecting what came before them and allowed them to even be in a position to make their pathetic excuse for a game. They don't care how humiliating of an ending this is for Arkham's Batman, to be executed with a single bullet to the head by everyone's least favorite glorified sidekick, Harley Quinn. All they care about is building up their own creations at the cost of tearing down what other people created. Say what you will about the Injustice games, at least they took their characters seriously and tried to tell their story while respecting the heroes. The first boss is the Flash, and he starts off the game still fighting against Brainiac. He saves the Suicide Squad from Green Lantern, and he saves Harley by sacrificing his life and freedom to stop Batman from shooting her. Batman takes him and corrupts him, so now the squad has to fight him. They couldn't give a rat's ass that he saved them multiple times. They all desperately want to kill him and take great pleasure in doing so. Compare this with how the game treats Wonder Woman. She inadvertently saves the squad in an attempt to fight Superman. She's very aggressive and hateful towards them, and yet during her death scene they're all traumatized. Harley practically cries over Diana's body. Someone who didn't give a shit about any of them got that treatment. And the Flash, who risked and eventually sacrificed his own life to go out of his way to save them, almost gets pissed on by Boomerang, who gets complimented on his dick size over Flash's dead body. And they have the audacity to wonder why DC fans hate this.
Take a hike, bro. Put a vest with a bunch of pockets on, get a stick, whittle it down, make it 3 feet, get to steppin'.
The actual boss fight itself is idiotic. Flash rushes in to punch Captain Boomerang, but doesn't notice their anti-Speed Force devices. He knows they exist, so there's no doubt he'd recognize the only device capable of stopping him. His speed is inconsistent in this game, because while Wonder Woman is fast, she's not fast enough to attack the Flash like she does without him seeing her coming a mile away. The device itself makes zero sense, and the mechanic to use it is even worse. This game is full of convenient coincidences that save the writers from all that pesky creative writing, like the fact that just as they see Lex Luthor's anti-Flash device get destroyed, Toyman comes to them in the next scene with one of his own. The fight is just sad. Why evil Flash would play with his enemies like this is beyond me. A murderous Flash would easily just rip their hearts out, something he literally did to Lex Luthor just a few scenes ago. But I guess here he forgot he's willing to kill and thought he was on the playground. Next up we have a Green Lantern. I'm not sure who decided to make him talk like an 1800s prison guard from the South, but it was a really stupid decision. He kept calling Deadshot convict, which was weird, and overall, it was just strange that Green Lantern even knew who Deadshot was, let alone had a rivalry with him. John Stewart is a military man. He always talks in a formal way like a soldier would, occasionally cracking a joke, but this version just wouldn't stop quipping. As far as his fight goes, on the one hand they get the anti-Green Lantern device from Batman's gear, but on the other hand it still makes zero sense. You can't just harness Yellow Lantern power, that's not how it works. It comes from whatever emotion the user has to harness to use that ring. It also doesn't poison his constructs like that. If it worked that way, Yellow Lanterns would slaughter the Green Lanterns. But again, that's just not how any of this works. Not that Rocksteady cares about things like logic. Speaking of things that make no sense, anyone who knows anything about Green Lanterns knows that once they die, their ring flies off to find a new worthy host. Again, that goes for people who know comics. The fucking idiots at Rocksteady have no idea about any of that, nor do they give a shit. They murder Green Lantern and his ring doesn't fly off. Then King Shark rips his finger off, takes the ring, creates a big green shark to destroy a shield, then the ring just falls into the water. When I talk about them not caring about canon and bastardizing it to fit their purposes, this is exactly what I mean. Who cares if the ring should have flown off to find a new host? No, we need the dumb shark to put it on and lose it for a joke. So the ring just doesn't do shit when the user dies in our world. What a terrible design. You're telling me the Green Lantern Corps has to go planet to planet collecting rings when one of their own dies? How does any of that make any sense? Please try to explain this bullshit, Rocksteady, because we both know damn well you didn't think about it for more than a few seconds.
The only power I have is that I believe we can do better.
Then we have Batman, and man, did they butcher Batman. They just destroyed him in a way that was undeniably spiteful, mean-spirited, and humiliating. First off, none of this lines up with how Arkham Knight ended. Batman just decides to step into the light and accept that people know his identity. What happened to Gotham needing a symbol that could only rise from the ashes of the Batman? He just decides to be regular Batman again, as if that makes any sense at all. Everyone knows he's Bruce Wayne. There's no way this Batman, who faked his death when his identity was revealed, would be alright with that. But again, who cares about respecting what came before them? All that matters is these weirdos pushing their crap forward.
This is all about me. Me.
This whole time, Batman just sits back and assesses the situation instead of getting involved and stopping these idiots from killing his teammates. Also, he just leaves anti-Justice League tech lying around for 3 weeks because that makes sense. Then he lets them watch most of his Babel Protocol recording and stops it right as they get to the Superman part. I guarantee the people at Rocksteady have no idea what the Babel Protocol is beyond what they read on Wikipedia for 5 minutes. They just included it to try to appease fans, like, hey, comic stuff, remember this? If you want to watch a much better adaptation of the Babel Protocol, go watch Justice League Doom. All this version did was help them with Green Lantern, and again, that was utter nonsense. Batman isn't even allowed to be Batman. He just doses them with fear toxin and then starts trying to scare them. That's what hero Batman would do. A version of Batman that kills people would just fucking kill people. He only scares them when he's avoiding murder, since it gives him an upper hand. If he's willing to kill, then that's just unnecessary and contrived, given how much damage they've done so far. Then these morons just decide to accept Harley's voice is real, as it tells them to mix some tanks, but they acknowledge the other voices they're hearing are fake. Anyone with a brain would assume everything is fake once you get dosed with fear toxin. Then, once Batman's plan works, Harley just counters the gas because I guess she's too crazy? It makes no sense at all. But then again, none of this game makes any sense. Yes, of course she's better than Batman. She easily overcomes his fear gas. You go, girl. Hundreds of millions of dollars to watch 4 nobodies stand over a bloody, beaten Batman. That's probably their idea of destroying the patriarchy. 4 psychopathic murderers standing over a half-dead rich white guy who dedicated his life to terrible things like doing good and saving lives.
Some men just want to watch the world burn.
Harley then picks up Batman to take him to Luthor's lab and makes some snide remarks. Clearly this was aimed at the time Batman carried Harley in the Arkham games and her ass was on the screen, which really pissed off these feminist writers. How can Harley even pick up Batman given she's not built like a powerlifter? Because feminism. Then they humiliate Batman more by putting him in a goddamn Pokeball, and at the lab they turn his iconic "I am the Night" line into a joke, cutting him off with a needle before he can finish. They take Batman to a park where Harley gives him a morality lesson. Apparently he causes long-term mental and emotional damage to everyone he knows. This is coming from a convicted murderer, a psychotic criminal who helped Joker slaughter thousands of people. Joker's side bitch is morally grandstanding the goddamn Batman. A man who dedicated his life to protecting the city from scumbags like her and spawned a legacy of heroes that will outlive him. In her opinion, it's time for the bad guys to save the world. How? By blowing shit up and stealing stuff? You just murdered Batman instead of easily restraining him until you find a cure. What an absolutely disgusting display of disrespect and humiliation towards one of the greatest superheroes of all time.
Hey, jump off a boat and let the boat leave. Starve in the ocean or get eaten by sharks.
This is how it ends for Arkham Batman, a bullet to the head from Harley Quinn. The man who defeated Ra's al Ghul, Mr. Freeze, Joker, Scarecrow, the Arkham Knight, Bane, and so many others gets taken behind the shed and put down like a dog with rabies by a delusional, glorified sidekick. What is the intention here? What do they get out of insulting and berating the hero who garnered them a massive fan base and praise for years, constantly humiliating him in arguably his most powerful state, evil and fully willing to kill? He should have wiped the floor with these retards so fast, Brainiac wouldn't even have processed their presence. But he's a straight white male, so since he's not a joke, he has to be easily defeatable and weak. It's such a pathetic attempt to give Harley some kind of power over Batman, as if he's in the wrong or he's been oppressing her. He's a hero and she's a fucking criminal. Of course she hates him. He always wants to spoil her fun and prevent her from, slaughtering innocent people. The way this game frames that scene makes it seem like Harley finally rid this world of a terrible person, instead of what it really was, an unnecessary execution of a true hero. The audacity to have a tribute at the end to Kevin Conroy after what this game did to his Batman is mind-blowing, just extremely inappropriate. People grew up with Conroy's Batman as a symbol of what a human without powers can do in the face of terrifying odds. But Batman is just a fictional character. It doesn't matter, grow up. Oh yeah, they love to say that when it benefits them, but say that about Black Panther or Shang-Chi, and now we're back to the children needing these heroes as role models.
You have a brain injury.
Superman is up next, and he's barely in the game, so not much to talk about. Kryptonite is terrible in this game. It has a weak impact on Superman, when in other adaptations it has a much stronger area of effect impact on him. Here it touches him and he barely seems affected. Fuck off with this Brainiac changed his DNA nonsense. It's ridiculous and makes no sense. After killing Batman, you'd think an evil Superman would immediately fly in and heat vision them to ashes, especially considering he was Brainiac's last hero, so you wouldn't want to risk losing him. Instead, he puts up a pathetic fight and goes down just like the rest of the league. His death was barely addressed, and then they all bragged over him like he was some huge asshole, instead of feeling a bit sad they had to kill the man who would give his life for their planet. A man who would have saved even them at the cost of his own life.
Is this a joke? Is this a joke?
Brainiac is the last boss fight in the game, but not really. Apparently, in what is definitely not a huge cash grab to keep people playing for years, there are 13 Brainiacs out there now. The one we fight waits until the entire Justice League is dead before intervening, because that makes total sense. Wait until your plan is about 90% wrecked before stepping in.
Sounds like this guy is a fucking moron.
The actual fight itself is literally just the Flash fight all over again. Now when I say that, you might say, well, mechanically all the boss fights are the same, right? Yeah, but in this case, it's the Flash fight again, because Brainiac just turns into the Flash. Why would he do that? Because the developers were lazy and didn't want to create a whole new fight based on Brainiac's powers and weapons. Like I said, that's all the boss fights, but one League member doesn't get a boss fight, because she's too much of a girl boss to get corrupted at all. I'm talking about the woman who's slumming it with us humans, a woman whose society single-handedly solved toxic masculinity, Wonder Woman. I honestly feel bad for the face model actress since they butchered her in this game. They made Wonder Woman look like a man. It's a trend that's been happening in the comics for a while now, since in the minds of these weirdos, a woman can't be badass unless she looks like a man. God forbid a sexy woman kicks some ass.
Go fuck yourself.
Every hero in the game gets treated in a very mean-spirited, humiliating way, but relatively speaking, she gets the most respect on screen. It's pretty obvious why that's the case and why the squad never fights or kills her. Yes, Wonder Woman is extremely powerful, but somehow she's the only hero the villains fear and respect. The Flash could rip all their hearts out, Lantern could shoot them into space, and Superman could burn a hole through their heads. Speaking of the Flash, as I touched on earlier, Flash is good at the start, but they still try to kill him even though he personally goes out of his way to save them and sacrifices his own life to save Harley. On the other hand, Wonder Woman barely cares about them while she's fighting Superman, treats them horribly, and yet they all feel a need to help her. Why didn't they feel a need to help the Flash, and instead legitimately hated him despite him saving them too? Well, he's a man, of course, and Wonder Woman is a strong girl boss who's inherently better in every way and much more deserving of their help and respect. In their minds, Diana is a true hero. Flash is just a silly man who died a pathetic, disrespectful death. Wonder Woman was honored by these villains who showed zero emotion towards anyone else. Why? Because she's a strong female character. Of course she's better than those gross men.
That is so deeply pathetic.
Harley's reaction to Wonder Woman's death reminds me of when Titania gave Jane Foster's Thor a girl power pass and surrendered in the comics because she respected what Jane was doing, since it's like totally hard out there for a woman. Of course, as the only female Justice League member, she's the one that held out the longest. Not the intergalactic space cop who deals with aliens like Brainiac all the time, or the fastest man alive, or the tactical genius Batman, or the Man of Steel himself Superman. No, Diana, the woman whose people solve toxic masculinity, is obviously better than them. What the hell is she even doing this whole time? There is nothing more important than these fights, but just like Brainiac and Batman, she never seems to be at the center of the big battle. She comes in to fight a hero every once in a while, but then just disappears, leaving these idiots to clean up the mess. Her biggest moment is her fight with Superman, and even that was sad to watch. All she knew how to do was smash her shield on him over and over again. She's treated pretty seriously up until she sees Green Lantern's dead, and announces she's still gonna save Superman, who then tackles her off screen mid-sentence for a joke. Then we have her inconsistent understanding of the situation. One second she understands they're being mind controlled, the next she blames Batman for Flash's death. They have no choice, you idiot. Brainiac owns them. Obviously Batman wouldn't do this crap otherwise.
Where was it you graduated from again? The University of Duh.
Overall, the costume design is awful. I mean, it's just horrendous. First of all, female character costumes have been desexualized in a huge way. We can't show a woman's legs now, so apparently Wonder Woman wears pants. This isn't new in the gaming world. We've been hearing for a while now that Western studios have directives to make female characters less attractive and cut down on their sexual appeal. Whether that means reducing their chest size or making sure women don't show an inch of skin, it makes you wonder what happened to all this talk of women dressing sexy to empower themselves. That's not even the worst part though, because frankly, every character's design except for Batman is horrifying. Flash and Green Lantern have the worst costumes, and yet another case of a studio attempting to fix what isn't broken just to make their own pathetic universe stand out. Superman's costume isn't as bad, but whether it's the textures or overall design, something about it just looks off. Then you have Brainiac, who looks like a goddamn Baldur's Gate reject. Who in their right mind sees his comic look and thinks, yeah, let's make him look like this instead? It's not like this is his first video game either. He was in Injustice 2 a while back and looked great. Even the short-lived Krypton show did a better job, and that was live action. There's also some other random inconsistencies in the story. Waller sometimes acts like she doesn't care if they die or not, but other times they're her only hope. Waller tricks them into breaking into LexCorp, but why not just tell them to do it? They have no choice anyway, why all the theatrics?
Is your idiot brain getting fucked by stupid?
The gameplay was created for the modern day audience that has a non-existent attention span and needs constant flashing lights, loot drops, fake exciting music, notifications, and annoying quips to stay interested. I mean, the fucking characters don't stop talking. Ever. If you stand still every 3 seconds, someone spits out some garbage, cringe dialogue. Continuing one of the worst gaming trends, all the enemies are bullet sponges. Hundreds of damage points pop up when you shoot an enemy to distract you with bright lights and high numbers. Their health bars are so ridiculous that doing thousands of points of damage a second barely scratches the surface, especially for boss fights. There's a better way to have Superman be the toughest boss without making him a bullet sponge that takes 30 minutes of non-stop shooting to beat. The music deserves its own section because I genuinely think the person who made it wasn't allowed to see the gameplay. It so desperately wants you to think what's happening on screen is cool, but it just isn't. Whether it's a pathetic suit-up scene or the one and only type of repetitive boss fight this game has, the music acts like you're a badass when the gameplay just doesn't make you feel like one. There's nothing badass about holding the fucking shoot button for 30 minutes until the enemy is dead. That's just mind-numbingly boring.
Well, that sounds terrible.
It is terrible.
Apparently, this game didn't even reach half of the player count the Avengers game had on Steam a day after launch, which I don't find that hard to believe. Keep in mind, it's a live service game meant to last for the foreseeable future. How is the Avengers game doing now? Or Gotham Knights? Check in a year or two from now and odds are this game gets taken offline. This game is a pure cash grab. The ending just sets itself up for non-stop battle passes, DLCs, and live service features that represent the never-ending, always online modern-day video game. It's the epitome of the corporate please buy more things ideology. The game is designed to drain your bank account and keep you invested without any substance, just constant empty stimulation and worthless rewards. Basically, they want you to keep paying for what you already own. So until it does go offline, what does the future look like for this game? Well, we have the beta male Joker DLC coming at some point. You already know Harley is gonna boss him around and treat him like a bitch in general, so the writers can get revenge on all the men who rejected them by living vicariously through her.
Well, that sucks!
There's already rumors going around based on some Easter eggs that Rocksteady is gonna revive all the heroes. Who the hell knows what nonsense they have in mind? If it's a Justice League game, good luck convincing anyone this version of the team is badass when these 4 losers easily defeated them. Whether these versions that died end up being clones or they pull some multiverse nonsense, the damage is done. It's too late to regain the goodwill of the fans. Clones or not, we saw what these writers think of heroes like Flash and Batman by the way they had their deaths go down. They can't just all of a sudden backtrack and pretend like they ever had a shred of respect for them. If they think they can just revive the heroes after all the disrespect and humiliation they put them through, and fans will just forgive it all, they're delusional. If you're gonna put the phrase "kill the Justice League" in your title, at least have the balls to follow through with that fully and live with your decision, instead of undoing it all to hype up a new game or DLC.
All that matters is power and the unassailable might of money.
As a DC fan, there is nothing to like about this game. It shits all over heroes we love in order to build up some psychotic losers who we're supposed to cheer for. I don't know what part of watching Boomerang almost piss on the Flash or Harley execute Batman is supposed to excite fans, let alone make them want to keep paying you for this repetitive, boring gameplay for years. That's not how someone who respects these heroes and this universe would treat these characters. Looking at the open world after you beat Brainiac is a pretty good representation of what Rocksteady did to themselves and the Arkham franchise. The people who once made it great are gone. All that's left is a broken, corrupted universe you never want to see again.